Welcome back to Real Talk with Cari and Haley. We're excited to join you guys again today. Cari, we have been doing this consistently for so long. I'm really proud of us for being so consistent every single week. It's like something to be said about that.
I agree. Now, we won't be doing this next week because I'm actually on vacation. So it's okay to take a vacation and not do it. So we'll only have probably a couple weeks of that throughout the whole year, but I am very proud of us for our consistency. Consistency leads to results, and we've been seeing that. We've been seeing viewership and our following up, and of course, people commenting. I just noticed another comment, so thanks for that. Yesterday, to whoever commented on our YouTube, don't forget to check us out. Real Talk with Cari and Haley on YouTube, by the way. And so last week we were talking about how to identify if we're pouring into the wrong people and like the detriment that does. And then that brought up something towards the end of our conversation, like it seems to always do, which was, how do we get out of those types of relationships if they're not serving the people involved? But in general, it was about how do we just make sure that we are just working with our people in the right way possible, or the best ways possible for the most success. And we came up with communication. And in the topic or the heading here today, I said communication, one of your top, success strategies. And I think personally and professionally, if we're thinking of relationships or we're thinking about business partnerships, communication is a success strategy if you can learn to be a really, really solid and consistent communicator.
Yeah. So there's a few different things that we want to identify as far as communication goes. The first thing is, as a leader, if you're a business owner, if you're a leader, I'm not even kidding. You don't even have to be a leader like with a title. We're all leaders, okay? Whether that's personally or professionally in your own home. How are you a leader in your own home? Stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. I don't want people who are listening to this to think, oh, this is just about business ownership. No, because we're all leaders, even assistants, executive assistants, chief of staffs, anybody within the real estate industry. We're all leaders at different times in our lives. So how can communication impact you personally and professionally? And so Cari and I want to identify a couple of things. So as a leader of a business specifically, your goal, or one of your goals, should always be casting the vision of your business, the vision of growth, how you are going to help yourself and others on your team to grow. If people in your organization know where they're headed, know what direction that you are going, it is so empowering. And when you provide them with the autonomy to make decisions, if they know what the goal is, they are most likely going to make more impactful and consistently better decisions if you are communicating your vision, your mission, your vision, and your values consistently.
Yeah. It made me think of something when you said that. We are absolutely all leaders. If we are a realtor, we're leading our clients. If we are active in our community, we're a leader in our community. If we have a family, we are a leader of our family. So, and we all have those moments to step up leadership. Somebody said to me that they actually created a vision for their family and casted that vision to their family all the time. And then the vision and the mission of their family became something in writing. And then they started to actually do different things throughout the year that were in alignment with their vision and mission. I thought that was really awesome. So just sparked that in my mind. So I wanted to state that in case that resonates with somebody, or somebody says, we should do that as a family. I think that's really cool. But regardless, if it's in your family, if it's in your community, or if it's in your business, casting the vision is a really big deal. And I was told by one of my leaders years and years ago, you think you're casting the vision all the time. As a leader, you feel like you're telling people all the time, and it's always in your mind and you see it clearly because it's your vision. And so it makes that you feel, or it creates this assumption that other people are thinking of it as often as you are, which is not true. And in fact, they need to hear it 10 times more than you need to say it to yourself because it's not theirs. And so if you feel like you've casted the vision enough, cast it 10 more times and it's probably still not enough, but you're on the right track. That's what he told me. So I was constantly finding ways to do it. And even though sometimes I felt uncomfortable, like, didn't I just say this? Like, I feel like I'm just really, beating a dead horse here. Sorry, for lack of better words, but it was it wasn't. People didn't feel
Mhm.
that way. I felt that way. That was my own feeling and limiting belief, but
Right.
people didn't feel that way. And finally they started to catch on. So I think it's important to realize, number one, that you have to do it more often than you think, and that you might want to do it in a variety of different ways, because people will receive the vision in different ways based on who they are and how they like to communicate, how they receive communication, how they learn, how they remember things. So in writing, in video, in person, all the things is probably really important.
Yeah. And you had mentioned to me earlier that it's very important to meet people where they're at as far as how they prefer to be communicated. So if you're a
Yeah.
force multiplier or an
Yep.
executive assistant or a director of operations and you're reporting to somebody,
Mhm.
we need to mold ourselves to how our leaders prefer to be communicated with.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning when we're
Mhm.
kind of just getting in the flow of working with them. Understanding how they prefer to be communicated with is
Mhm.
so incredibly important. The same thing with your agents and the same thing with goodness, your spouse, your
Yeah.
children. Everybody has a different form of communication. So, or a style that they prefer
Yeah.
in which it resonates with them.
Yeah.
And same thing with your clients too. Some clients prefer a phone call. Some don't
Yep.
mind a text message. Some don't mind an email. But if you're
Yeah.
consistently emailing somebody and you feel like they're constantly coming back to you for clarification,
Yeah.
that is not effective. That form of
No.
communication is not effective, and it needs to be elevated. It needs to evolve into something else.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that to me earlier, just how important that was.
That is super important. And it's funny because people will have clients or team members or administrative staff members or other staff members coming to them. And they, as a leader, get frustrated saying, why are these people coming to me? Why can't, and it's always about them having to come and ask for clarification. And that should be your sign as a leader. This is a leadership skill to point the finger back at yourself and ask yourself the question, like, is this, what do I have, what DNA do I have in this situation? And the
Yes.
question really ends up becoming, if everybody's coming back to me, then my means of communication isn't clear. Clearly multiple people aren't getting it. So what do I need to do differently? And I think the best thing to do, whether it's a spouse, a team member, a staff member, a child, is to ask them, like, it seems like my communication isn't clear. How can we communicate better? What would be best for you? And I think we all have to be open and willing to do that. And yes, it feels like we're always being, flexible and changing. But if we're a leader, that is something that we actually need to realize we should do. And you mentioned earlier, once that relationship gets stronger, you can then start talking about efficiencies. If maybe the way
Right.
you're communicating isn't as efficient, but you've got to start somewhere and you've got to meet people where they're at. And the best way to find it is to ask. And that's, a sales strategy we've used for years, which is when you're sitting across the table from a client, asking them, how do you like to be communicated with? What is the best means of communication for you? What did you or not like about your past real estate professional, for an example? Well, if we are leading an employee, you could ask the same question. When have you had the best communication with a leader before, or a manager?
Hmm.
Like, start asking those questions and realizing what has worked for people, and then be willing to actually employ those things. If you have a team or a large family, and there's multiple people, you might have to communicate more than one way. And that's just life. And so you've just got to get a system around that. For me, when I've got five grown kids now, because including my soon to be, daughter-in-law, we have 7 of us in a group text, because our kids are not like going to do a Facebook group, right? They don't even go on Facebook. They aren't going to pick up their phone if we call them. And so it is efficient, and they actually listen to or respond to text messages. So that's how we do our family group text or communication. But your team might prefer a group text. They might prefer a Facebook group. They might prefer something else. You might have to send videos, because people are just not reading your emails, and they want to hear you, and they will listen to that when they're driving to and from appointments. So I guess the whole point here is, are you looking at your communication strategies? Are you listening to the feedback that you're getting? And are you doing something about it? Because it's really, really critical.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to point out too is that you might not always get the feedback that you need. The
Mm.
feedback might not be verbal. The
Yeah.
feedback might be someone shutting down.
Yep.
The feedback might be that you're losing agents.
Yeah.
The feedback might be people are avoiding you,
Hmm.
or they're turning away, they're shutting down. I mean, we need to pay attention to those things.
Hmm. They're getting frustrated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're getting frustrated. I mean, the reality is that most of the time we have to look inward
Yeah.
and we have to ask ourselves, is there something that I am doing that is impacting the culture of my business place?
Yeah.
Why are people shutting down? Or is this a
Mhm.
consistent pattern?
Mhm.
And it might not always be you, but it's really
Mhm.
important to self reflect. It
Yeah.
really is, especially as a leader in your home, leader
Yeah.
in business, even with your clients.
Yeah.
And we do have difficult clients, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just so important to have that self-awareness
Yeah.
and to be humble enough to say, is it me?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, self-awareness is the number one skill set of successful entrepreneurs and real estate professionals and business owners and human beings that are leaders. There's actually a statistic about that. People think influence, sales ability, charisma, connections are the things that actually make leaders, especially entrepreneurs who are building business, the most successful. And the number one skill was self-awareness. Why
Mm,
is that? Because if you're not self-aware, you will never be able to meet people where they're at. You'll never be able to develop strong relationships. You're not going to be able to, be efficient and effective in your communication. And communication is a top success strategy. So in life and business, if you're struggling with communication, I think it's always a good idea to turn it back around, ask yourself some great questions, try some new things, be open to realize it might be you and it's okay. You just need to make some changes. There's really no right or wrong, right, Haley? It's just about, it's got to be right for the person or that relationship. So it's not like you're wrong because you communicate in this way. It just
right,
isn't working.
right.
So, just like anything, if something doesn't work, you work to fix it. And that's the same thing for ourselves as leaders. We should be in that same mentality. Communication is key. It's going to lead to success in your organization, growth, productivity. It empowers your people to go be the best version of themselves. Clarity is power. The number one stressor, and this was also a statistic I read. If you ever read the book Living Forward, they have a lot of great statistics about retention and employee engagement and so forth. Living Forward by Michael Hyatt's great book. They talked about the number one stress in a position where people are actually saying they're stressed out in their job is lack of clarity, not knowing what they're supposed to be doing or
Yes.
where they're going in order to make the right decisions. It's the number one reason people get stressed out. So if people are leaving you, it's because they don't have the clarity they need. They don't have the communication. And that's what gives them power. And it's what makes them less stressed. And it's what makes them get into action. That's what you're trying to get them to do in the first place. And they're not doing it. And then you think it's their fault. And it might just be that they don't know what you really need and want for them. And they don't know where the business is going in order to make those decisions.
Perfect. That's a perfect note to end on, Carrie. Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome. All right. Communication's key. We'll see you back here, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. So if you guys have some suggestions on topics you'd like to hear about, as always, comment here, let us know, and go check us out on Real Talk with Cari and Haley. Thanks, guys.
Bye.